Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm Tom Gross.
And I am Dan Ream, finally released from the clutches of the goblin. Well, they said they were surgeons, but they felt more like torturers.
And are you going to share what it is those torturers did to you?
At least they had the sense to, at least they had the kindness to put me under before they shoved stuff up my nose. And
oh, gosh.
so...
Oh, well, I'm sorry that you had to experience that, but hopefully that it takes care of the problems that you were having.
Sinus surgery is, actually, I shouldn't complain. Compared to what most surgeries are, it was pretty easy. It was,
yeah.
I was wheeled in there at 11:30. I was home by 3:30 or 4, and I've been draining ever since.
Draining ever since. I love it.
We'll leave it at that.
What a great image to be. And while you've been suffering through all that, I've been watching tons and tons of high school basketball.
Oh, yes.
As our school does this awesome tournament at Thanksgiving time called the Tournament of Champions in memory. It's a memorial tournament to legendary coach from our school, Kevin Brown, who died of glioblastoma. I believe that's what it's called.
Yes.
And they, over the years, have been able to attract high school teams from around the country that are pretty darn good.
Yes.
The attraction this year was the number one junior in the country playing on what most, I don't know, whoever makes the ratings across the country, the number 5 team, the number 5 high school team in the nation was here, along with, a really, really good team from Houston and some other just teams from around the country, from Chicagoland area, and then, of course, 3 Mid-Illini teams. And it was just a weekend of lots and lots of basketball. And, of course, what drives me there is my daughter's a cheerleader for our school. So, of course, I'm there. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I stay for other games? I've got
right.
So let me just say the bleacher effect has taken between the back and the other where you sit. Bleachers are not kind to someone our age.
You gotta it comes with the bifocals. You gotta get the bleacher chair.
Yeah, I've always
waddling with that like all the other old people.
I just feel like I can't do that. That's a admittance of age and falling apart. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's what keeps you together.
But that is, it's easy to have an I love us moment. But I do appreciate our community. I think does things like that really well, where they support and bring in just some really outstanding things like that to try to help.
Yeah.
In a bigger picture. Was it crowded?
Oh my gosh. This won't mean much to people listening, but on Wednesday night, I found a parking space out by the Pantherplex, which is a good half-mile walk in. We don't have tons and tons of we have lots of parking. It's just not always really close to the school.
Yeah.
And so 5 Points lot was full. The stadium lot was full. Of course, the senior lot was packed. I didn't realize they were doing VIP parking behind the school. They've usually shut that down and just put team buses back there. But it was really, really crowded on Wednesday. It was a nice reprieve when I went on Thanksgiving Day. No local teams are playing. It's all the teams from outside of the area because we do a big Thanksgiving dinner for them at a local catering place, a banquet hall, and all the teams come and they serve them a Thanksgiving dinner, the teams and the families. And
nice.
Jody, I didn't realize Jody Brown, Kevin's wife, speaks there, and they discovered there was a student from one of the California teams. It's the team that is the number 5 in the nation. In the middle of Jody's speech, they shared this on TV or on the YouTube broadcast last night. He gets on his phone and he texts his mom and he says, "Hey mom, how did dad die when I was a kid?" And she texts back to him, glioblastoma. And so afterwards, this player comes up to Jody and is like, "I didn't know this, but I just, while you were talking, found out from my mom that that's what my dad died of as well."
Oh, wow.
And so made a connection, and it was really sweet. They give checks throughout, in between games, they're giving checks out to the Kevin Brown Foundation. And you could see this kid came running over to Jody and just gave her the biggest hug. And you're like, that's the kid. That's the kid that made the connection. And so it's just, I mean, it is amazing, all the connections and the things. And you're right, our community does things right like that, as I'm sure most communities do. But just living here, it feels good, and it's great to be able to witness and take part in something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, by the way, happy holidays, everybody.
Yes.
We have passed that Thanksgiving line, and now the lights are up, the trees are up, the decorations are out. The goblins did one heck of a job in here in the dungeon. It looks just phenomenally awful, but great, all at the same time. And so, yeah, I think it's time to... It's been a while since we've been together in the dungeon. We've done some remote interviews. We've done some solo shows, each of us, just because of schedules and things. So it's good to be back here in the dungeon together with you. And we're going to talk about... We're wrapping up for the year our Creatures series, I guess is what we were calling it. And so I was going to ask... Usually you put together a little introductory poem or story. So do you have something like that for us today?
This one stymied me. I could not come up with something I was happy with for Celestials, which I don't know what that says about me. Probably nothing good. That I can't identify with the angelic and the lawful good. That it just doesn't. I don't know. I
would say that your characters often tend to lean toward the chaotic or neutral side of things. And so, yes, lawful good. And so our creatures we'll talk about today is, as Dan said, is the Celestials. We saved them for December, sort of felt like a good time to talk about.
Angels we have heard on high.
That's right. So we thought we would talk about Celestials. And while I was doing the research for this, I realized that I really didn't know much about Celestials in the D&D world. You flip through the player's handbook and you see pictures of them and whatever, and I just never really had a use, I don't think, for a Celestial. I don't think I've ever used a Celestial. Maybe in first edition when me and my buddies were looking for just tough things that just attack and fight just for fun. When we did our we did like the fighting pits where we'd fight just the Demogorgon and Orcus and all these stupid things, and we all had vorpal blades and whatnot. But I don't think I've ever used a Celestial in a legitimate role-play game before.
I've only seen it used once, and effectively, but we'll get there, I think, probably. But, yeah, and there's really not that many compared to some, a category like Undead where it just goes on and on and on. This is a fairly limited number.
Yeah. It's also somewhat fitting that we are doing this after we talked to Adam Lee and his book Worlds and Realms, because the Celestials are native to the upper planes. So I went and looked at his book before coming in and read about the upper planes. Just that when you get to that part of the book, it's almost at the very end. In fact, it might be the very end. It is not Mordenkainen does not tell a very coherent story about the upper planes just because they're so unexplored. And Mordenkainen's kind of like, the only time you would really ever want to go there is in your afterlife. And he goes, I don't even know. He goes, I'm sure that that's where people go. And whether it's to the upper planes or the lower planes, he said, I just skimmed my research across those planes because they really aren't places you want to be until you're ready to be there. So that's what I got from that. But Celestials, according to the Monster Manual, are creatures native to the upper planes, and many are servants to deities or employed as messengers or agents in the mortal realm and throughout the planes. They are good by nature, so that so the only time you'd come across one that is not good is one that has strayed from the path, probably corrupted by the material plane. I think that actually somewhere it talks about that.
Well, they said the part that I picked up on is the corruption is usually a fault of pride.
Oh, right. Yes, they love the adoration. What's the word? Adulation.
Either one of those would work.
Of the mortals, and so that corrupts them into
impatience with whatever task they've been set and wanting something else.
Yeah. But they mentioned, just to wrap up on the description from the monster manual, if you come across a corrupted celestial, it's likely to be a horrifying encounter.
Yes, I did actually. I don't know where I saw this. Maybe it wasn't Monster Manual, but the other option is you can meet a fallen celestial that's regretted its choice.
Yeah.
And it might be like sort of in a self-imposed exile, living as a simple monk somewhere or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, I think that was in the description of. Yeah, I think I know where that'll come up again.
Story.
That would be an interesting.
Yeah.
That was another thing that I found in researching Celestials, is it gave me lots of story ideas. Because there's some, and it usually comes from the flaw or forgottenness of deities or the Celestials themselves.
Yeah, I struggled. Because as I look through this, I realize they're very hard to use. I think it's much trickier as a DM to insert at least the big boy celestials into a campaign. In a way, it's very obvious. Unlike you and your demonic friends who love shoving Vorpal swords into angels, it's sort of hard to set up a combat against something that's lawful good.
Right.
And in addition, you think, well, we'll just NPC then, maybe they're a helper.
Mm-hmm.
But most of these are so powerful that you can, but you got to wait till your characters are probably at least, level 10 or above.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just going to be the angel doing everything and them doing nothing but hide.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah, I suppose you could use one as something that just comes and assists you at times, or it becomes aware that you're in need. Because one thing that most of these celestials have in common is the ability to heal.
Yes.
But even then, it's almost like you're always bailing out. It would feel like you're always bailing out your characters if they got into trouble. So,
I did see it used watching a campaign online on YouTube where the party was relatively high level. They were coming up against the big bad, and they had an ally who was a cleric who could summon a deva, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so,
which is a lesser of the angels.
It's the least of the angel creatures, but still massively powerful.
Right.
And so that made sense. That kind of worked in the, as an ally, but against something that's so huge that, it makes sense.
Right. So let's start. You mentioned divas. Let's talk about angels first. What do you have on them?
So they're lawful good. They always attack evil monsters. And I'll give credit to the folks who flesh out these descriptions to kind of help a DM, because they do say the thing about angel creatures is that they are used to commanding rather than receiving orders, and they don't tend to listen to advice or anything else.
Yeah.
And I guess I know that's kind of cliche, but I think that's a very effective sort of flaw in the lawful good, is that they're so certain that what they're doing is the right thing that they won't listen to advice, and you could use that to complicate things for your players a little bit in an interesting way.
Yeah, because I think one thing that players often do, and maybe it's just representative of people and humans in general, is there's always exceptions to things. Whereas it seems like an angel or a lawful good character, perhaps, they don't see that. They see their path, and it has to fit in the path or it doesn't.
As a tangent, I think that I always think of paladins as paladins irritate me because they seem overpowered.
Always.
But I think that's where, it's problematic. The thing that would weaken the balance is if you're playing a paladin lawful good, as a player you can't always use your best judgment.
Right.
But
that's a good point.
So as a DM you could try to enforce that, but then that causes a whole other set of problems. I mean, is it really fun for the person? If I'm sorry, your character wouldn't do that. You can't do that.
That's why I've
Or
always,
okay,
yeah.
you want to do that now. You have no more smites because your god's mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not cool. That's not fun. But that's really what should be happening.
Right.
But
That's always been my problem with playing a paladin. And it's not to knock people who play them. That's not what I'm saying here. It's just personally, I've never, I mean, yeah, paladins are cool. They're powerful. I love the image. I love the shield that would go along. Like my paladin would definitely have a shield and just be that crusader. But man, it's not a very wide path that they can walk.
No.
They would always have to be making concessions that do what you're saying if you're playing it right, and you'd always be giving up something because you're making your patron or your deity, you're upsetting them because you're trying to go along with whatever. It's almost like you would have to play a paladin to really have a ton of fun. This is just me. To be able to play a paladin that would be a ton of fun would be to play with a group of lawful good characters that all have the same, and even if it doesn't fit or whatever, but everybody's going for it. You know, you got lawful good cleric, and that maybe everyone's following the same deity, and so you've got the lawful good cleric, and you've got the lawful good paladin, and I don't know what else you'd have this lawful good that would fit into that.
Monk, maybe.
A monk, yeah, and so even though as players you're like, oh, this may not be the right thing to do, but we can all agree that to play the lawful goodness all the way, we have to go this route, and then everyone can.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll give what pops into mind is our friend Dan Zare when he played Zedai the Paladin.
Yeah.
In the final showdown, my big bad was trying to convince you, and I think was making a little bit of headway with a couple of you.
100%. 100% he was.
And that's when Dan just had his character just cut the entire conversation off and just attacked.
Yep.
And I thought that was really cool. That was, I mean, personally I was a little frustrated because like, oh, I got more to say. But I thought, no, you know what? This really, you know, the epic movie score, and you see the knight in shining armor just charging the demon.
Doing the right thing in that case. I mean, you had really, besides, first of all, just to talk about that a little bit. I don't think have we talked about that in the show? I feel
Not
like
for a while.
Yeah. Anyway, he had offered every one of us something of just great value to each of us. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. I'm not falling for it. But then when he started to kind of give us like, hey, look, I'm willing to work with you. We have a common enemy, you know, and he was really his persuasion was really starting to kick in. And then in the back of my head, I was like, Borum was like, well, it would be kind of nice to have that endless, you know, I remember you were giving Borum something that was an endless with something with Ale. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it would be worthless in battle, but in character, it would have been beautiful. But everyone else was getting something. So I was like, okay, maybe we can go along. So yeah, I mean, you had Borum, he was in your back pocket. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. Zedai's moment of truth right there, where he just, no, this is wrong, and went in. And that whole battle was just cinematic. I don't know that I've ever been in a battle that's been quite as cinematic and well played out by everybody at the table, including yourself, so well. Anyway,
sorry, that was a big tangent.
To Angels, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we got there through
lawful
good,
yeah.
And you'd mentioned how they will fight evil at all times. I love the way that the monster manual puts it. The monster manual puts it that they are destroyers. That they are destroyers, and they will relentlessly pursue evil and just destroy it all.
You know, and as another tangent, one thing I appreciated about their lore that they did with angels here is, like, angels obviously are a Christian, I mean, it's from the Christian faith.
Right.
And I think in our culture, they've kind of been softened and dumbed down. But if you actually look at references to them, they are scary. And I appreciate the fact that whoever created this lore decided that's what we're going with. We're going to pull out what it really says about them, not what our culture has decided.
Yes. Every one of these that's described, from the diva all the way to the solar or solar, I never know how to say that A in there.
Solar sounds cooler.
Solar, yeah. They all are described to be awe. Like people who see them will be awestruck.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a role that goes into like stunning or charmed. I think one of them does have some sort of a charm, but they are completely awestruck, which is how they've always been described.
Yeah.
What I did want to talk about, and we were kind of heading this way, is the other side of angels and the fallen angels. And the monster. Oh, you want to stop that? Okay.
Sorry, just I don't know. It might be nice to kind of sum up.
Okay.
So the day of it, they go from challenge rating 10 to 21. So the Deva is a CR 10. Planetar is the medium build at a CR 16, and then the Solar at CR 21. And everything about all their stats are high. Devas are going to have anywhere from a +3 to a +5 on any check. Planetars +4 to +7. Solars +6 to +10.
Wow.
And as we kind of already said, their healing abilities are, they can just kind of at will do whatever they want to heal people, including raising the dead. And as you get up toward the top of the Solar, 3 resurrections a day.
Oh gosh, I missed that.
So
it'd be nice to have them around when you're in like some sort of a massive battle against, where he's just resurrecting
zipping
people
around.
Yeah, I mean,
you get a life, and you get a life, and you get a life.
Oh, sorry guys, I'm done. I liked the purpose of each of these that was described. That the Deva comes in as, oftentimes will show up as a mortal, and the goal of them, from the deity's point of view, is to offer hope and aid and to bring courage to the mortals on the material plane. The Planetar is a weapon of the deity. So when something is to be dealt with, they'll send in the Planetar, their representation of might.
Well, that's cool.
And especially fond of missions that involve battling fiends.
Okay.
And then the Solar is a representation of glory and power, which is what I always think of when I think of angels.
Right.
I was not aware of this. Solars, there are 24 of them.
Yes, I thought that was interesting that they...
And most of them are not... are not active. They sit and they contemplate and they wait until they're called upon, which again I found to be just an interesting idea. And I'm even thinking, as far as a story hook goes, what if a campaign came across the Solar that was in contemplation, but something evil has trapped it or made it unable to take action? And so your mission is to find a way to break that.
Oh yeah. And
then maybe there's a larger, like the Solar is needed to rid like a whole land or a nation of evil, but the Solar that would normally protect that area is, or the deity that protects that nation, its Solar is trapped. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seemed like something that'd be really cool. I liked this about the Solar. Sorry, I skipped. I mean, there's not much else for me to say about the Deva or the what's
Planetar.
Yeah, the Planetar. The Solar has a flying sword.
Oh yeah.
And it has a bow that can kill upon the shot.
Yes.
Which,
that was yes.
Wow.
If it hits you, you have to make, if you have less than 100 hit points, if it hits you, you have to make a con save or you're just dead.
I mean, wow, that's incredible. The Solar also has legendary actions, which when you talk about massively powerful creatures, that's where the Solar, those legendary actions. I didn't write down what they are, but do you have to?
Right.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
I'm sure one of them is the saving throw one. If it fails a saving throw, it can just decide to succeed, which I think I'm always like, come on, really? Seriously? Okay. So anyway, so those are the angels that are on the lawful good side. There
Yep.
are the fallen.
Yes.
And basically, a fallen angel is one that has lost connection to its deity, for one reason or another. It may seek purpose by rebelling, which is why and you also mentioned pride comes into this. But what I liked was, and this also builds on something you said earlier, and that is those that do not choose to rebel against their deity or against the mortals that maybe the pride is what brought them down, is some of them will just become hermits and do things quietly to hope to get redemption or to serve justice again.
That struck me. That kind of slots into the same category as like a dragon, an ancient dragon that the silvers, the ones that tend to take on human form and just appear as a kindly
right.
old teacher or whatever. That could be a similar role there. But
I like that.
Yeah, the most famous fallen angel within the D&D world, of course, is Zariel.
Yes.
Who
Avernus.
Yes, she was impatient with the celestial reaction to the blood war.
Right.
And so she decided to go and take matters into her own hands. And
didn't turn out well for her. I mean, maybe it did.
No, smite demons. Yeah, she joined
demons.
the devil's side.
And she's a major player in the adventure. I can't remember the name of the adventure.
Descent to Avernus.
Descent to Avernus. Yeah,
Yep.
It's fitting. Probably one of the most famous.
Yeah. So then there's this other category, if we're ready to go there, that kind of where we threw everything else.
Yeah, it's the catch-all.
Yes.
Because there's all sorts of amazing creatures, but I guess we have good and bad. Because there is one celestial that is inherently bad that I came across. But we'll get to that one in a little bit. Let's stick with the good. And I don't know what's first on your list.
I guess I kind of went by CR.
Okay.
So the first one would be Pegasus.
Pegasus, yeah.
Which is only CR2. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I wrote down what you already said. Yeah, very, very fast.
And I mean, my mythical.
Yes.
I think of Greek mythology when I think of the Pegasus. And how it was gifted, the Pegasus was gifted to, who's the hero?
Oh, you're going down a...
Wow, I forgot who the hero is. It'll cut Perseus.
Okay.
And so, among other gifts from the gods, the Pegasus was one of them. And so I see that as being a way that a Pegasus could show up is if you are doing something noble for a deity, that maybe a Pegasus would be gifted. The use of a Pegasus, not you get this Pegasus, but you get to use this Pegasus will serve you.
And according to the lore, they're connected most closely to elven gods, to the Seldarine.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
So, but that's, a homebrew. You can make it whatever you want. But
right.
That's interesting to me that's the lore that they decided on.
When you talked about quickness, if you go statistically based on stat blocks, they are extremely fast. A 90 foot speed on ground, and then at flight, they are a 90 feet per round flight.
Nice.
So I guess if it sprints, that's what, 180?
It can get you out of a jam real quick.
Real quick, or get you into a situation really, really fast as well. Okay, so that's the Pegasus.
Yep.
And another four-legged I think is next. Is that right?
Well, there's...
Or am I...
Yeah, let's go a little bit...
Because they're a CR5.
Yeah, there's another one, but yeah, go ahead and jump in.
That would be the unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
The unicorn, again, we probably are familiar with the unicorn from mythology quite a bit. If you were a child in the 80s, you might know the famous unicorn named Uni from the cartoon. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which I don't want to talk about that anymore because that was a really, in my opinion, a very irritating character. But this is what I learned about unicorns that I don't know if I knew or if I just forgotten, but they basically are protectors of, generally they are placed into forests that are enchanted forests, but they are aware of everything. They have this awareness of everything that happens within that forest, clear down to when a spider is making a web, to what is being whispered on the corner of the forest. They can hear it.
Yeah.
And so they're divine guardians, placed to protect sacred places.
Yes. I think there's a few other things too that I thought were sort of cool. They have spellcasting abilities that sort of are druidic, which makes sense.
Right.
And they the unicorn horn is an invaluable magic item.
Yes.
But killing a unicorn brings down divine retribution. That whatever god is associated with it will come after you if you are implicated in slaying a unicorn.
Right. I can only imagine you must have a serious want for that. I mean, it was listed that if you took a unicorn horn and made it into a wand, it would be an utterly devastating or grand wand.
Yes.
Because the power is so there's so much power in that.
Yes. So next, moving on, or you got other stuff?
Yeah, I was thinking there's one more thing I was going to say about them.
They tend to be paired with a paladin. I did see that.
Okay.
That tends to be a natural fit, which again makes sense. Kind of a cool image.
I guess that's all I had to say about them. There's something you were saying. I was like, oh yeah, but it's gone. So let's move on.
Okay.
What was before unicorn?
The Quaddle is a CR4.
That's the one I read all about and I was so interested in. I didn't put them in my notes. So I've got my book open to the Quaddle.
So I have used one of these as an aid to a party.
Yes.
Because they've got some restoration, some healing abilities, that sort of thing. But you found some, like, the lore about them. It's very brief, but I think very evocative.
Yeah. So a Quaddle is created by a deity as a protector of something, kind of like the unicorn, just in a very different sort of creature. If you're not familiar with the Quaddle, it has a snake-like body, but then it's got the wings of an angel. Lawful good. So while it looks horrible and terrifying, it's not. But what I thought was cool when we were talking about, like, how do we use some of these creatures because of their power that they have. One thing that I found to be interesting lore-wise is they are created and they live for a very, very long time. So long that a deity that creates the Quaddle could be forgotten. And so it sort of loses its purpose, and you may encounter a Quaddle that is searching for something, searching for purpose, searching for its deity that is now forgotten or has been killed. And so I thought that was an interesting piece of lore that comes along with the Quaddle. I also like the fact that they are true tellers. When you parlay with the Quaddle, it cannot lie. However, it is not compelled to feel it has to tell you everything.
Right.
And if you make conclusions that are incorrect, it does not have to correct you. It's just in what it speaks to you, it cannot lie. Which I think, again, if you're the DM that loves to do that, parlay and have that with I would be a disaster trying to role play a Quaddle. My brain can't work in that way. But I can see you would love that.
It is fun. I didn't use it that way, but that would be interesting. And one of the things it's a shape changer, so you can have it appear as a human or humanoid or whatever you want, really, to the party. So jumping on another one that's similar, I think in this category, they almost all fit, but the ki-rin.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's just from the name. I'm wondering, is that like maybe from Korean mythology?
Perhaps. I couldn't find anything that gave. I had the same thoughts that it definitely has a cultural feel to it,
and the art looked like they were trying to evoke something of that part of the world. But the two things that stuck out at me from the description was good personified and a muscular stag the size of an elephant.
Yeah, they're huge. And to build on that is that the scales on this, I mean, it has scales, it has golden fur. It's a conglomerate of things, a
Yes.
conglomeration of things. But to look upon one of these can be quite dazzling because of the gold, and it gives it that aura that sometimes we associate with angels or the lawful good. And so it gives that holy fire appearance, which is really neat, and that would be fun to talk about or describe in the game.
I say mechanically, it's sort of interesting because it is an 18th level caster,
Yeah.
but it's cleric spells, and its attacks are actually sort of underpowered. That it gets 2 hoof attacks, but they do 2d4 plus 5, and then 1 horn, which is 2d8 plus 5, which is not bad, but for CR12, that's not. So
it's really the more magic.
it's the magic and the being able to move around quickly. They can do gaseous form, they can do wind walk. So I think, again, I appreciate the consistency from the folks who wrote this up, because that kind of slots in nicely with what Pegasi and unicorns are like.
That's true.
Which is intriguing. The only other thing I found about them lore-wise is they have their lair is filled with treasure. So it's sort of like a dragon. They like to surround themselves with wonderful stuff. But I think if I read this correctly, unlike a dragon that gathers treasure, they conjure treasure.
Oh, I missed that. That's cool.
So, so maybe, what pops into my head, if you were feeling like using one of these in a campaign, maybe they've been captured by something evil that's forcing it to conjure
Wealth.
to try to free it.
Interesting. Man, I'm just trying to imagine trying to capture one of these and holding it. But there's a lot of awful things in the world of D&D that could do that. The other storytelling piece that I read about the ki-rin, and by the way, the ki-rin is found in Volo's Guide to Monsters. Is that the full title of the book?
Yes.
It's Volo's Guide, but I forget what to. I think it's to Monsters. That's where you would find the ki-rin. It may be in other places. I know it does exist in first edition and probably second, third, and fourth, but the storytelling piece is that people in a community or in the material plane, when they see a ki-rin, oftentimes the myth is that when a ki-rin shows up, it is a harbinger of good. Oh. So when you see one, a community might rejoice and expect good things to happen.
Okay.
When one of these shows up. So, and yes,
That's
it is
cool.
Volo's Guide to Monster. I had it right here in my notes, and my eyes refused to look at it until just now. So anyway, I mentioned this before, and when I read in Worlds and Realms, the book about the Outer Planes, there was a picture that I remembered from first edition Monster Manual. And in the context of reading about the Celestials, I thought it was an interesting picture because it shows a ki-rin and a coatl in combat from the first edition Monster Manual. And I was just like, that's an interesting take. Now, again, it was made 50 years ago or drawn 50 years ago. And so maybe these Celestials hadn't been quite shaped to the level they are today. But
yes,
I don't think that's something that you would actually see.
No.
Or maybe they're playing. Maybe that's what they were doing in the picture. They're at play and not in combat. But I thought it was kind of an interesting picture to see.
So I've got one left, and I think you've got one that I did not have.
Yes, that is correct.
The one I have left is, I don't know, probably less interesting than yours. So
let's talk about it though, because I think I have that one too.
Yeah. So the Empyrean.
Yes.
So this one again, I don't know how you would use it, other than just a world level event, because they're CR23. Empyrean is a child of the gods.
Yes.
And they make it interesting that there's a 25% chance that any given one will be evil.
Right.
So I don't know if that means just sort of spoiled brat kid that's stomping around and destroying stuff in a temper tantrum. These creatures have a spell save of 23.
Good heavens.
At will, greater restoration. And they've got, I kind of like this. Their melee attack is called Maul.
And what does that do, perchance?
$6d6 plus 10,
Okay.
which is not overpowered.
No.
And then they have the Bolt, plus 15 to hit, 600 feet, 7d6. So in a way, actually, now I think about this does, I like the way they've designed that, because I really do get the notion of a big spoiled temper tantrum, just stomping around and punching stuff and wrecking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the damage is sort of more in line with maybe not attempting to destroy the way a demon lord or something would do, but just sort of the side effects of the temper.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of Imperiums in other editions that make me feel like it is a big old baby.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at them like some of the pictures make them look very doughboyish.
Yes.
Yes. I was just turning in the monster manual here to see if I can find. Is it huge? Is it? Yes. Okay, it is huge. It's a Titan.
Yeah.
When I was reading about them, story-wise, I thought, okay, so how could you use an Imperium other than if it is just sort of being a pain, and the goal of the group would be to try to persuade the Imperium to let
Calm it down.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, I guess there could be some cool things that come along with that, but otherwise, I had a difficult time figuring. I'm the same. I had a difficult time figuring out how this would be something that you could use in a campaign. Mm-hmm. The one thing I did like about it is, I mean, okay, is that they will fight fearlessly because they're not afraid of dying. They can die, but they don't have that like mortal sense to them. So they would wade into a very unfair, could potentially, I don't know what would be an unfair battle with one at a CR23, but they would wade into a battle that could be detrimental to them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. To me, it's more of a persuade the Imperium to do this or that,
yeah,
or try to get the favor of one rather than put yourself in a position where you're going to fight it.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe if there's an evil one, you get that 25% chance and you're going to somehow try. And again, it would have to be very high level. I think it's cool. I think there's some like legendary things you could do with those, but I just, in an everyday sort
maybe it's more maybe it is sort of part of the background. There's this thing crashing around in a certain part of the world and your characters just have to avoid it.
Yeah. I mean, it's right up there with the Tarrasque. I don't know how you'd ever use a Tarrasque legitimately in a campaign, other than you're going to try to get it to change its path of destruction.
Yeah.
And do things to distract it and that kind of thing. And so maybe there's something there. I would love to hear if somebody has an idea of how to use an Imperium or if you've used one. So let's move into the one that I had that you didn't.
Yes.
Because there aren't a whole bunch of them. This one I found in the Eberron book. And this is the one that it's listed directly as lawful evil. It's the only evil one other than the Imperium having the 25% chance of being evil or a fallen angel or something like that.
Okay.
This one is created as lawful evil, and it is called the Radiant Idol. So the name itself tells you that, I think tells you that it's an idol, and so we know in a celestial and angelic sort of way, in a deity sort of way, idols are not good things. Mm-hmm. They're typically bad. And so a radiant idol is a type of a fallen angel because of one sin. And that one sin is it desired to be worshipped by mortals. Mm. And so I guess it does start as a good. It just gives you, this is a type of angel or fallen angel that is quite specific. On the material plane, when you find a radiant idol, probably what you will find first are its cult followers. Okay. And that will lead you to the radiant idol. They are visibly warped from corruption. So when you see one, it is an awful sight. Where an angel would be an awestruck, beautiful sight, this is an awful sight.
Is it still humanoid, or is it actually?
It's humanoid.
Okay.
Yep. What makes it awful is that instead of wings, it's bloody stumps where the wings used to be. Or you still have like the branch of the wing, but it's like broken and bleeding. Or you could have some fun here with some visible play where the wings are still there, but they're weighed down by chains, and the chains representing their pride.
Okay.
And so you could have some fun with that. And there's some other things you could do as DM to make them visibly, like give them that visual corruption feel. They will, though, use disguise self when they are trying to trick. So they will change their appearance to go away from that visible corruption sight to try to be something different, to try to bring in, to try to trick people,
right.
I guess. The Radiant Idol will drag its cult followers down, twisting their morality, bringing about an ominous ritualistic behavior all the way to a fanatical doom. So depending on the level of corruption of their followers, you could come across some pretty awful things. Again, story purpose wise, I could see like you come across a community that people are leaving, and people are trying to figure out why are these people leaving. And so maybe they're not completely far gone. Maybe the Radiant Idol has just started to create that fanatical, maybe it came as an angel and the pride star. And so there's this confusion among the community of we were following this angel and now awful things are happening and people are leaving the community and angry and it's happened. And so you have to deal with the Radiant Idol that way.
Do they maintain their power? Are they as powerful as the angels we looked at the beginning?
CR11.
Okay.
They have an aura of false divinity, which is kind of when you get into that era, they have this ability to trick you, but still powerful, powerful. But some of their corruption, I believe, is probably what has sucked some of that power away. But still, there's a lot of story that can go along with those. I'm not surprised to see this Radiant Idol show up in a world like Eberron, that is a world that has been devastated by war, a land that could be easily tricked. You got tribes and people that are desperate for hope or something like that, and so a Radiant Idol might be created, or a Radiant Idol comes to the land of Eberron to find a lost people and be able to bring them into their cult fanaticism. So anyway, I thought those were kind of cool.
Yeah.
In an awful sort of way.
No, that does fit with Eberron for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, those are Celestials.
Yeah. Let's say, just to kind of sum up as any good teacher would.
Yes.
So a little difficult to use, but I think they do have they can definitely flavor a campaign if they're an NPC, if you can nerf them a little bit if they are a fallen angel but are repentant and are just in a simple monk's guise, that sort of thing. Otherwise, you really need to wait until your players are high level characters before.
Yeah, almost epic, 16 to 20 level. I also see them potentially being used if you're a world builder. You might use one in some way to help build societies or things, and maybe they're influenced by an Imperium or something like that. But other than that, they're just, to me, as a DM who generally leads characters that are third level through 6th or 7th level, I don't have a whole lot of use for them other than maybe a Pegasus or a story with like a unicorn or something like that. So they're cool. They're cool, though, to read about.
Yeah.
So, well, if you at home are listening to this and you're thinking, Celestials, I've used those before, but they're crazy. That's crazy talk. Tom and Dan don't know what they're talking about. Let us know. Send us an email, teachersinthedungeon@gmail.com, how you've seen or used Celestials in your game. Always open to new ideas. We'll share your thoughts and ideas on the show. So join us there or join the conversation online. Instagram and Facebook are Teachers in the Dungeon. on X or Twitter. We are at Dungeon Teachers, and be sure to follow. I can't wait to see the art that you're going to put in for this show on YouTube.
Yep.
So join us on YouTube as well to check out the shows there, where Dan has put some awesome art and images that go along with what we're talking about on YouTube. So for Dan, I am Tom. Happy holidays, everybody. We're not quite there yet, but this is definitely worth saying happy holidays. Good luck with your shopping out there. And until next time, keep rolling those 20s.